Coronavirus vaccine mandates. The Senate votes against the Biden administration. We're on Capitol Hill. Religious freedom. A former education secretary talks about schools at the crossroads. Democracy advocate. Why an imprisoned Catholic in Hong Kong is facing even more punishment. And beloved friar. How Blessed Solanus Casey still inspires devotion more than 60 years after his death. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, December 9th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this feast of St. Juan Diego. I'm Tracy Sable. Senate Republicans, with the help of some Democrats, passed a bill repealing President Joe Biden's vaccine mandate for U.S. businesses. It is the latest push by the GOP to unwind policies they say violate America's freedom. But the bill faces an uphill battle in the House. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
The Senate voted 52-48 to nix President Biden's vaccine mandate for businesses, which was supposed to take effect in early January. Republicans say that it'll cost millions of people their jobs, and the federal government has gone too far.
You either get the vaccine, or you get tested, or you lose your job if you choose to do neither of the two. That is the heavy hand of government. That is overreach.
Senator Mike Braun is leading the Republican charge to roll back the administration's vaccine mandate for businesses. Others say it's not even legal.
I don't think that it's constitutional, but I also don't think that the president has the right to tell private businesses and private individuals what choices to make.
Republicans picked up votes from a pair of Democrats, Senators John Tester and Joe Manchin. The West Virginia lawmaker said in a statement, quote, "I do not support any government vaccine mandate on private businesses. That's why I have co-sponsored and will strongly support a bill to overturn the federal government vaccine mandate for private businesses." But other Democrats say Republicans are pushing a dangerous strategy.
My friends, America, we are in the middle of a public health crisis. Everyone sees the damage it causes to themselves, their friends, their families, their communities. And the way to solve this is be driven by science.
Last month, the federal court temporarily blocked the mandate requirement, calling it, quote, fatally flawed. It's now under judicial review. Republicans say people know what's best for them.
I support the vaccine, but I support liberty as well. And the difference between Democrats and Republicans today is that my Democratic friends think that government knows best. They want to run your life.
A few House Democrats will need to sign on to the bill to bring it for a vote on the House floor. Also, Senator Roger Marshall is working on a bill to exempt healthcare workers from vaccine mandates. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Continuing coverage now on the Supreme Court, hearing oral arguments in a religious freedom case. The contention comes over whether or not the state of Maine can ban families from using the state's tuition aid money to send their students to faith-based schools. And joining me now to discuss is Betsy DeVos, former U.S. Secretary of Education. Secretary DeVos, great to be with you today. First off, I'd like to get your thoughts on that case and the possible implications, in particular, the impact on religious freedom.
Well, it's a really important case, Tracy, and everyone's watching it very closely. Everybody who's been fighting for education freedom for many, many years. What we know about the Maine case is that the Maine law explicitly discriminates against faith-based schools. And so the court will opine on this soon. It could have really wide-reaching implications for schools across the country. And I'm very hopeful that that's the case, because families more than ever, after experiencing the last year and a half with all the lockdowns and COVID, are seeking alternatives and other options for their kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about that now, the pandemic and the impact, as you mentioned, it's had on students and also their learning. A recent study from the National Bureau of Economic Research, it looked at the standardized test scores from the 2020 to 2021 school year in 12 states, and it found that passing rates in math classes were down more than 14%. Does that surprise you? And what do you think needs to be done to better support our students and their academic success?
Well, it doesn't surprise me in the least. I was fearing this and predicting this early on when schools initially shut down. And the longer that they stayed closed, we knew intuitively there was going to be dramatic learning loss. And tragically, it's the kids at the lowest end of the spectrum that are being hurt the most, or that have been hurt the most. We're not going to know the full extent of it probably for months, if not years. But the only way this is going to ultimately be resolved for each child is if their families can do the things, get the resources and do the things they need to do to catch their child up and help them to continue to get with their learning.
Yeah, and as you talked about, as we know, you're a big supporter of school choice. And like we've seen through the pandemic, a lot of families have been reassessing their educational options. Here in the state of Virginia, where I live, public school enrollment dropped by over 3% since the fall of 2019. And in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is one of the most populous counties in the state, their enrollment in public schools dropped by 7%. Let's talk a little bit more about what is behind this. And do you think this trend will continue?
Well, I do think the trend is going to continue because, number one, while kids were locked out of school, families suffered. They weren't able to do the rest of the things they needed to do. Kids learning at a distance, for most of them, it didn't work well. And then for families, for parents, they could see firsthand what their kids were learning or not learning. And many of them were horrified, frankly. I mean, Loudoun County's been kind of the epicenter of that, where now parents are going to school board meetings, rightly so, to question curriculums, things that are happening without their knowledge or consent. And I think families have really awakened to the fact that while they thought they had a lot of control with their kids' education, they in reality have not. And so it really is ripening the environment for education freedom, for putting the resources that are already designated for every child into those families' hands to be able to direct and control their kids' futures and their kids' opportunities to find that right fit for them. 21 states across the country have expanded or created new school choice programs so far this year, and I think it's only the tip of the iceberg on what is going to happen.
Yeah, and quickly, we probably have about a minute left, but I want to get your take on this. We talked about Loudoun County. There was a high school there recently that gave out a survey, and it asked students some really invasive questions about their sexual history. And what's more, parents were actually left in the dark about it, never even notified. I want to get your thoughts on that. Is this even legal? And what purpose would a survey like that have?
Well, I don't think it has any real legitimate purpose. And no, it is not legal. There is a federal law that prohibits that requires parents, families to be able to know in advance and decide whether or not they would choose to have their child asked questions such as that. It's a Privacy Act for students. And so parents should actually raise their voices about this and continue to challenge the things they see that they know are not in line with their own family values or what they want for their child's future.
Well, Secretary DeVos, thank you so much for your time today and for weighing in. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
At a White House summit today, President Joe Biden said democracy doesn't happen by accident and it has to be renewed with each generation. But he also warned democracy is going in the wrong direction and that global freedom is in retreat. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Today, President Joe Biden opened up the first White House Summit for Democracy, virtually welcoming dozens of countries from around the globe, including Poland, Sweden, Argentina, Nigeria, and many, many more.
President Joe Biden tells a global audience democracy faces alarming challenges, that it needs champions. He says while democracy can at times be fragile,
but it also is inherently resilient. It's capable of self-correction, and it's capable of self-improvement. And yes, democracy is hard. We all know that. It works best with consensus and cooperation.
But during his speech, the president also warned of outside pressure from autocrats, who in his words seek to fan the flames of social division and political polarization.
They seek to advance their own power, export and expand their influence around the world, and justify the repressive policies and practices as a more efficient way to address today's challenges. That's how it's sold.
Holy and eternal God.
Later, a trip to the U.S. Capitol, where former Republican senator, presidential candidate, and World War II veteran Bob Dole lay in state. He died Sunday at the age of 98. President Joe Biden considered him a longtime friend.
He, too, was a giant of our history. And that's not hyperbole, it's real. Of wit and grace, of principle and persistence, of courage and conviction.
This morning's ceremony, the first of several in Washington commemorating Bob Dole's life. Tomorrow, his funeral at the Washington National Cathedral. It'll be live streamed at the World War II Memorial on the National Mall. Senator Dole's casket then travels to his Kansas hometown and the state capitol.
Also today, President Joe Biden spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky. This as the world waits to see whether Russia will invade its neighbor. And speaking of Russia, both Russia and China were not invited to this democracy summit here at the White House, and they accused Washington of exhibiting a Cold War mentality. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
California may become an abortion sanctuary state. Its taxpayers already fund abortion costs as part of California's Medicaid program. Governor Gavin Newsom now wants lawmakers to extend those reimbursements to out-of-state residents, including for travel and lodging. Coming up, Myanmar Massacre. See why there is growing unrest in the country. And papal encouragement. Hear the Holy Father's message to young people suffering from addiction. Reports from Myanmar, also known as Burma, say government troops have deliberately executed villagers as possible retaliation for a recent roadside bombing. The military is fighting resistance to last February's coup. A video shows 11 human remains, including children. A court in China has handed down new convictions against 3 pro-democracy activists for their participation in a Tiananmen Square remembrance. Jimmy Lai and 2 others were found guilty for holding a candlelight vigil in violation of COVID-19 restrictions in June of 2020. Lai, who is Catholic, is already in jail in connection with a 2019 protest. He faces additional charges due to enforcement of Beijing-backed national security laws. Pope Francis encourages young people who suffer from addiction to invite Christ into their lives. The Holy Father said, quote, "Have the courage to say, I think that there is a better way." Pope Francis shared his counsel with an international Catholic community for recovery in Rome. The Synod of Bishops has removed a link on its website to a group focused on outreach to same-sex attracted people. The link came down after officials learned the U.S. Bishops' Conference expressed disapproval of New Way's ministry in 2010. The USCCB says New Way's, quote, does not have approval nor recognition from the Catholic Church. Parishes around the world have begun preparing for the Vatican's Synod of Bishops scheduled for 2023. The first phase began in October and lasts until April 2022. In it, dioceses around the globe are being asked to submit feedback from the faithful on the state of the Catholic Church. Second phase begins next year. The final phase, the Gathering of Bishops, takes place at the Vatican in October 2023. Joining us now is Christina Kheng, member of the Commission for Methodology at the Synod of Bishops. She is also a professor at the East Asian Pastoral Institute in Manila. Dr. Kheng, thank you so much for your time today. As we just heard, the synodal path began a couple of months ago. Why is it so important for church leaders to have feedback from the faithful?
Well, that's because we're all in mission together. Everyone has a part to play. And moreover, this synodal path is not just about giving feedback from the faithful to the church leaders, but it's really for all of us to come together with each other, to reflect, to pray, to listen to one another, and to discern together what God's Spirit is saying to the church as a whole today and how we are called to move forward together. So that's why this process is important for all of us to come together, to share and to listen to each other.
And I'm curious, what did you think? What was your reaction to being asked to help in the synodal path? And also, what are your specific tasks leading into the gathering of bishops in 2023?
Well, when I was asked, I was struck by the profound gift we have actually for the whole church to embark on this process, because I think it's a really special time and it's a really special call. It's a time of renewal. For me, I'm part of the Methodology Commission, and our role is to develop the guidelines for carrying out this whole reflection and discernment process. And we also accompany the local churches and the church associations around the world to help them through the process. That's starting now, and it's going to happen over the next few months into next year.
And I want to switch gears just slightly here. I'm wondering if you can talk to us about the state of the Catholic Church in Asia right now.
Well, it's really not a single homogeneous picture, but I can say that on the whole, the church in Asia is vibrant. It's a relatively young church. It's coming of age, though. People still have a strong sense of spirituality, of communion and collaboration, and that they are taking to this synodal process quite enthusiastically. But like the rest of the world, we do face the challenge of an increasingly secular culture, growing consumerism and materialism as well, and also fragmentation in society. So that's why all the more important for us also to be embarking on this synodal process together with the rest of the church and learn how to dialogue, how to reflect more deeply, to listen and to journey better with each other and with the rest of the world.
And Christina, what do you think can be done to strengthen the church in Asia?
Well, first, I think there's got to be a lot more faith formation, faith development, tapping on people's sense of spirituality as well. We really live in a very rich place of different cultures and religions, and we can definitely dialogue and learn from one another. And for me, I think an important aspect is to journey with the youth. They have dreams and aspirations, but they have many challenges as well, especially with this pandemic. So that's one of the important things that we have to do in the church, really to accompany our youth, to listen to them, to tap on them and to empower them.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for your time today. We really enjoyed speaking with you. Christina Kheng, member of the Commission for Methodology at the Synod of Bishops. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Up next, Path to Sainthood. Hear more about the ongoing impact of Blessed Solanus Casey. A new episode of They Might Be Saints on EWTN is doing a deep dive into a priest who could one day be declared a saint. The show will look at the life of Blessed Solanus Casey and the impact his life and work still has more than 60 years after his death. And joining me now to discuss is the miracle hunter, Michael O'Neill, host of EWTN's They Might Be Saints. Michael, welcome back. Great to see you as always. Tell us a little bit more about Blessed Solanus Casey and his potential path to sainthood.
Saint for many Americans. This is a man who was born in 1870 in Wisconsin And he grew up and he had a large family that he helped support, his mother and father raising all their children. So he became a motorman, a coach driver of a trolley. And he experienced a sort of a murder attempt on that trolley. And that sort of sent him off on this path to become a priest. And he sought out different orders and he ended up being a Capuchin. And it was that life as a Capuchin, ordained as a simplex priest, because he wasn't able to pass all the academic rigors of that order. He ended up being the doorman. And as a doorman, he opened the door to many people who sought him out. The lines were incredible. And he worked miracles and acted as a counselor for so many people over the years.
That's so interesting. He became known as the doorkeeper, as you mentioned. While you were doing this, working through this process on this episode, did you learn anything new about Blessed Solanus Casey, maybe that you didn't know before?
Well, he is a great miracle worker, perhaps one of the greatest we know in the history of the United States. So that's of great personal interest to me. So I've always had a close eye on Father Solanus Casey. But I love some of the things related to his great quotes. He said things like, "Blessed be God in all his designs." So even when things didn't work out, when some people sought a miracle and didn't get it, or in his own life, he saw God's providence and just worked with what was given to him. And he also, he had this quote, "Thank God ahead of time." That was something he would always, when people would approach him, whether it was a financial difficulty or a marital problem or a healing that was needed, he would always end it saying, "Thank God ahead of time." So I thought that was amazing. But in this episode, one of the parts that I really enjoyed the most was we were able to show the story of Paula Medina Zarate, who was the miracle recipient that was used in his 2017 beatification. So we got to talk about her incredible healing from ichthyosis vulgaris, which was a skin condition. And it's absolutely amazing that we captured that on film. So that was a great interview to include with the other great interviews.
Yeah, that's incredible. Can you talk a little bit about, how he's still relevant today?
So I think people really are attracted to Father Solanus. And if you go to the Solanus Casey Center in Detroit, you'll see so many people praying there in front of his tomb, or even at the gift shop, or even in the museum room they have there. They want to honor the life of this priest. And he was so human. And that was something that had a great appeal to the people of that time and even people to today. So I think, the fact that he is this great miracle worker and people seek out his intercession, but they also see his simple love of God above all else. And I think that's an inspiration to many people. So I'm hoping that this episode sheds some light on this great person, Father Solanus Casey.
And before I let you go, I know everybody wants to watch. So can you tell us where we can see this episode, and also what else are you working on?
So this episode in particular airs on Friday, which is tomorrow, December 10th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And this episode is part of the series They Might Be Saints, which covers Americans on the path to sainthood. And so every Friday at 5 p.m. we have another episode that airs one in a row. So it's very exciting. And then I've also been doing a series, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, traveling to places all over the world, such as Loreto in Italy, which also airs on Friday. And on Sunday is Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Mysteries of Guadalupe. So I have a number of programs airing this weekend. So it's been a great blessing to be able to produce these for EWTN.
Well, we can't wait to see them all. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. Always great chatting with you.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, we asked you yesterday to see your nativity scenes, and you answered the call. Thank you to everyone who sent us pictures, and now we'd like to share a couple with you tonight. This first one is from Joe Cart in Colleton, West Virginia. Look at this. I love this. This is a very unique creche right here. This one is from Eric and Zara Fiddleson in Lilburn, Georgia. I know exactly where that is. They say it is the only nativity scene in their neighborhood, and it stands out. Marilyn Williams sent this beautiful one in Hinesville, Georgia. Thank you, Marilyn, so much for watching and sending us in the picture. Beautiful. And finally, Mr. and Mrs. Dennis Richard in Las Vegas. Well, they show us this right here. It's their family's outdoor nativity scene, and it is spectacular. Thank you to all. And please share yours with us. Send a picture to EWTN News Nightly at EWTN.com or to our Facebook and Twitter accounts, and be sure to include your name and your location, and you could see it featured right here on EWTN News Nightly. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.